Monday afternoon, and I'm reflecting on yesterday's gospel reading, that great story of the Emmaus Road, and particularly that moment in it when the disciples at last do recognize Jesus. And the writer says, Luke, the writer of the gospel, says that at that very moment Jesus vanished from their sight. So they recognize him and then he's gone. This sense that God, the risen Lord, is elusive, that we can't quite reach him. He's always just beyond our grasp. I think there's an important lesson in that, about how Jesus always goes before us. And it reminded me in a way, strange though this might seem, I remember as a child when going hill walking with adults, that those who had longer legs always got there ahead of us, and they would, at various points halfway up the hill, they would stop and pause, and they'd wait for us children, shorter-legged creatures, to get to them. And as soon as we reached the resting point, they moved on, so I never had a chance to rest. And it's that sense that Jesus is always ahead of us, that he's just moving on, never letting us stay still, never really quite resting. The great Welsh poet R.S. Thomas has a great phrase in one of his poems where he says, "He is such a fast God, always before us, leaving as we arrive." And that's a great feature of the Easter season, that the risen Jesus is both, you can encounter him, but he's also elusive. If Good Friday tells us that Jesus is in the midst of our suffering, Easter says that he's always somehow ahead of us. And this is the mystery of the God in whom we believe, the God who is both present in our midst and yet always and everywhere ahead of us. And the collect that the Book of Common Prayer sets for Easter Day captures this rather well. Almighty God, who through thine only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, hast overcome death and opened unto us the gate of everlasting life, we humbly beseech thee that as by thy special grace going before us, thou dost put into our minds good desires. God's special grace going before us. So in these days, let us remember that God is not just in our midst, he goes before us too.